It's August 3rd, 2017. We are in the Hollywood offices of Councilmember David Rue, who's graciously considered to interview us today. I'm Michael Masterson. I'm with the Silver Lake History Collective of the Silver Lake Neighborhood Council. Our cameraman is Marco Larson, and we have Cheryl Revkin and Mark Simon present, who are committee members. So thank you very much for doing this with us. We appreciate that.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for asking.
So I was going to find out a little bit about your background, your family's background. How did your family end up in Los Angeles? And were you born here? And tell me that.
You know, I want to say born and raised because all I know is Los Angeles and this neighborhoods, but actually I was born in Korea, born in South Korea. And my mom, after the 1965 immigration reform and in the 70s and 80s, there was a lot of immigration from Asia for those with professional skill. And my mom was a nurse, and that qualified for immigration. So she immigrated first to this country. I was born when I was about 1. My mom came over, and then my father followed when I was about maybe 3 or 4 years old, and then I came when I was about 5, 6 years old. So so I came at 1981, and I can't remember anything before the age of 5. I don't know. I don't remember anything before the age of 5. I remember a little bit about going to kindergarten in South Korea, but then, I moved here. I think my mom first moved to like Chicago when she first came, but she eventually came to Los Angeles. So when I came straight to. I grew up near. It's that one area. I think they call it Virgil Square now, but it had no name back then. It's not Hollywood. It's south of Hollywood, south of Los Feliz, east of Silver Lake, north of Koreatown. So it's that one area, and if you look on a map, I think it's literally the center of Los Angeles. Right. So it's not LACC area. It's not East
Virgil
Hollywood.
Village.
I think that's what they call it now.
I think you're right. Virgil
but back then it wasn't called Virgil Village. Now it's the big thing to name your neighborhood. But that's where I grew up.
And where did you go to school?
I went to Dayton Heights Elementary School, which was down the street from me. Then I went to John Burroughs Junior High in Hancock Park. Very good school. I was very fortunate to go there. And then I was supposed to go to John Marshall, which was my home school. By the time I went to John Burroughs, I was in the magnet program. So I went to the first high school to be named after a Latino, and it was a medical magnet. So Francisco Bravo Medical and Health Professions Magnet in East LA. Yeah. So, because, back then I was brainwashed. I thought I had to be a doctor. I thought that was the only thing you could be in life. But obviously not.
Yeah, your mother was influenced on that.
Oh, both my parents. But I think it's the immigrant family. I mean, I think it's the immigrant story. Usually, and it's not just recently, it's not just for Korean American or Asian American families, but if you look at Armenian Americans, Russian Americans, if you go back in our history, Irish, Polish, they all wanted their children to be doctors or lawyers because doctor gave a sense of security. Because the one profession that does translate over when you immigrate, even if you can't speak the language or know the culture, everybody needs a doctor. Right, everybody needs healthcare. So it's more of a protective measure to make sure that I'm okay and my future family is taken care of. It's not that they want me to be rich or famous. It's just we want you to be able to feed yourself and your kids.
Security.
Yes.
Did your mother continue in nursing?
Yes, she continued in nursing. But she worked. Even though she was a nurse, it was hard for her to find a job. So she was working in convalescent homes in the daytime, and then in the evening she did the night shift for home health care stays. And then eventually our family saved up enough money, and we opened up not a liquor store or a dry cleaner, but a toy store. So I was the most popular kid. And we called it it was called Laura's Toy Store. I mean, that was the name when my parents purchased it. But it was more like a mini swap meet because we sold everything. We sold clothes. We sold whatever.
Where was it located?
It was on 8th and Vermont.
Okay, so Koreatown.
Koreatown, yes. And actually, both my parents went back to school. My mom became an acupuncturist, so eventually became an acupuncturist. So so we sold the business, and I think we sold it. I don't know what year, but it was before the LA riots, and during the LA riots, that building burned down. Yeah. But we weren't. Yeah.
It's kind of a classic immigrant story, though.
Yeah.
Your parents coming in and doing that.
Yeah.
So that you went to this magnet school that was medical. So did you think you would be a doctor? Did you have any aspiration to that, or what did you want to be?
The one thing I do remember from before I was 6 years old in in kindergarten was for your birthday you had to say what you wanted to be when you grow up. You sing a song and you say what you want to be, and I wanted to be an Air Force pilot. I remember that. Obviously, that didn't happen either. But growing up, yeah, I mean, I had aspirations to be a doctor, but honestly, it wasn't my aspirations. It was more, that's all I heard from my parents. So I just assumed that's what I wanted to do. And, I like the helping people part, aspect of it. And, you could give back, you could save lives. But yeah, and that's why I went to a medical magnet high school. I lost my, I grew up in the age of Beverly Hills 90210. I don't know if some people know that show. And of the big high schools, but my school was like an institute. So I missed the whole high school experience, the football team and all of that, because I worked in laboratories and worked in the hospital, which is why when I went to college, I wanted to go to the biggest college, the most densely populated college in the city. I didn't want it to be off somewhere in the farmlands. I wanted to be in the city. So I went to UCLA.
Yeah. And did you go there to study political science, or?
No, I went in pre-med.
Uh-huh.
I was still, by the time I finished high school, I realized I don't want to be a doctor. But I invested so much time, and it's funny. So I tell high school and college kids, you do not have to pick your career right now. It's okay. Explore. Take different classes, have different experiences. But I thought I was already spent way too much time in the field of science and medicine. So I said, I don't want to be a doctor, but I want to be a research scientist. I wanted to cure AIDS, cure cancer. So I still went in bio pre-med at UCLA, worked in the lab again for another 2 years till I finally said, I can't do this. I worked in labs, and it's not like what you see in movies. Because in the movies, they tell you the discovery part, but what they don't say is that discovery part took about 20 years of tedious work. And I was like, well, I can't do this. And then about my second, third year, I changed my major. That's when I started to explore, and I actually changed it to philosophy, history, Asian American studies. That's when I started. That's why I really am thankful to liberal arts education and for general education requirements. When I first got in, I said, I don't want to take these general education. Why do I need art history for? But I took it, and now I know when I go to a museum, I actually understand what I'm looking at, right? Some of the different history and the pieces. So I did my general education curriculum later, and I changed my major, I think, at least 5-6 times. And then I ended up graduating with economics. But, yeah.
And then what was your work experience after that then?
So when I was at UCLA, I started... I still love the helping people part, and I was involved with tutorial projects, at local high schools, disadvantaged high schools. I got involved with like the prison coalition. We didn't just go to disadvantaged high schools, and we also went to youth camps. It's one step lower than juvenile detention camps. So to help with mentoring and helping them with their GEDs. So I did a lot of nonprofit service work. That's where I started to learn more locally, and the fact that I was bilingual, and so my skill sets were doubly beneficial, like in the Korean American community and the Asian American community, because I was bicultural and bilingual. So I worked in the nonprofit sector, working in advocacy, voter registration. I taught ESL classes to seniors, helped them prepare for the citizenship exam. I worked on immigration reform, immigration advocacy, and I did that for several years. And I wanted to do. I wanted to go save the world. I wanted to go work in. Back then, I grew up in the generation of. I don't know if you remember the big famines in Ethiopia in the 80s. So that was really an image that really sticked with me, and I wanted to go work in sub-Saharan Africa. And how do you do that? I don't know. And I started researching, and I said, United Nations. So my dream job was to go work at the United Nations. And in that process, I signed up for Peace Corps. And then through that process, I found a graduate program, went to graduate school in the East Coast, and eventually worked at the United Nations. Yeah. And,
In what area, what department?
I wanted to, United Nations is humongous. Now, first off, working there was a real downer because it really demystified what I thought the United Nations did. So if you thought the U.S. government, if you think we're slow, if you think City Hall is slow, then look at the federal government. And federal government, well, these days it's a little crazy, but but it moves at a snail's pace. But the United Nations makes the U.S. government looks like we're moving at light speed. So it was a real downer. But I tried to look for a department. It's so even hard to navigate. But I wanted to work for the department that was the frontline defense, meaning whenever there was war or famine, right after the war or famine, people come in for international aid. So the people on the ground who coordinate that international aid, who help disseminate that aid, because there was many problems in the past where, after some sort of natural disaster, people would need vaccinations. And all the countries would send in vaccinations, but no syringes. So you got to throw it all away. So now it's about coordination. So I work for the Office for the Coordination for Humanitarian Affairs, which is one of the top 3 departments. It's a smaller department. So it was very eye-opening. I mean, it was a good experience.
Did you get to go to Sub-Saharan Africa?
No, it was difficult. The one thing I did learn was the UN is trying to do parity, and they're trying to be more diverse, and it's heavily dominated. The United Nations staff is heavily dominated by Westerners, Western powers, Europeans and Americans, and male. So as a U.S. citizen, as a male U.S. citizen, the odds of me getting a job at the United Nations was almost next to none. So I did get an opportunity to go, it was an internship actually, a graduate internship, to go to Geneva, but it was non-paid and it was very expensive, so I couldn't go.
So what brought you back to LA?
So in between I worked in various nonprofit jobs. In the East Coast, I worked in Camden for Save Our Waterfront, which was a community-based bottoms-up organization, did all of that. And I did have a huge debt after grad school, and I did work in the private sector for about a year or two. Money was good, but it was not as rewarding. So I came back and I was trying to do a career shift, and I was about 27 years old. I came back to LA because I finished grad school, and I was debating whether I should just go private sector or public sector or what to do, and then I just got a call from an elected official who got a copy of my resume, and who just basically said, "Come on in for an interview," and offered me a job on the spot, which was something I back in my college days and my younger days when I was working in advocacy, we used to protest the U.S. government. Oh, you guys are doing this wrong, or and you're not efficient enough, or coming from the community side. So my image of government was negative, meaning politicians, they're bad, they're corrupt, they don't do anything, they're just in it for themselves. So the last thing I wanted to do was join those ranks. But at 27, I said, I'm young enough, and I remember my teacher saying, if there's a problem, you could complain and eventually give up, or you could step up. So I just said, okay, I'm gonna try this out, and actually I wanted to learn how the system worked, because I was convinced it was corrupt. So I wanted to go on the inside, learn how it works, so I could come back out. I was gonna work for 2 years, come back out and say, I speak from experience. They are really inefficient. They don't do anything. But it obviously went the other way. I did not realize what elected officials actually are empowered to do. And when they have the desire to do something, they have the power and the resources to get it done. So I was like, wow, is this what you do here? And instead of working for 2 years, I ended up working for 6 years to the day she retired. And that was LA County Supervisor Yvonne Burke.
Okay. Yeah. So that's what inspired you to run for office?
Still, no. When I worked in our office, I just got to work on all the social services. I mean, it was an amazing experience. I worked on mental health issues, homeless issues, foster care issues, senior services. I mean, everything, all of society's problems, we were able to work on. And I only worked on policy. But when she retired, I got my first taste of campaigning because, for her, someone to succeed her. And then, unfortunately, the person I supported and my boss supported lost. And that opened up to a whole new wing of politics. And I started supporting other candidates I believed in. Not the candidates who were perceived to win, but candidates who I thought would do a great job. Unfortunately, most of those candidates all lost. And it got to a point where I got disillusioned by the system. And they said it happens. When you start working on the inside, you get disillusioned. And I got disillusioned because supposedly I knew people, I was somewhat connected, I knew how government works, yet I couldn't get anything done. So how could I, with a straight face, when I did voter advocacy and voter registration earlier in my career, during college and after college, I could no longer go to my friend with a straight face and tell you got to register to vote, you got to vote, your vote counts, your voice counts. When I felt that, I don't think my voice counts. I don't think my vote counts. So it was my last attempt to put it to a test, and that's why I ran, because I truly, truly believe in our system. I believe in our democracy. I believe, one person can make that difference. So instead of trying to get other people to do it, I decided to step up.
And how do you feel? You're the first Korean American on the city council.
Yeah. First Korean American, second Asian American, which is a little shocking in itself as well, because Los Angeles, we're so diverse. We're the largest city with the largest population, not just Asian Americans, but I think any ethnic minority or any customer culture outside of their home country. And not just in the United States, but probably worldwide. Yet we've only had one Asian American ever elected, and then I'm the second. So, yeah.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I want to talk to you a little bit about development. I know you have some strong feelings about developers' development and kind of how that's impacted, particularly on your district, Hollywood, and other adjacent districts. So, can you speak to a little bit about that?
Yeah, it was evidently clear. Development was a huge issue during the campaign, and it's a big concern in the community. But, more than development, there's a more fundamental issue that was at play. And development was one of those issues that helped me tackle the underlying issue. Because it's not about just solving development. It's not that it's so easy to solve. But then, if you don't tackle the root issue, then the next problem becomes traffic. Then the next problem becomes, take your pick. And the fundamental issue was lack of trust. So people weren't yes, people were upset at development, but it wasn't just the development, it was the lack of transparency, the lack of community input, the fact that, the thought that, everybody's in cahoots with each other. There's all these people paying people off, and there's all these backroom deals going on, and who's looking out for me? No one's looking out for me in my community. This is just a whole big backroom deal kind of thing going on. That's what the real problem is. Because at this point, even if a good development project came to fruition, people are just begin with, there's something wrong with this. There's no such thing as good. Right. So, and that's why I tackled, and one of the pledges I took was I wouldn't take any developer contribution. Right. And that was because it was evidently clear that the distrust and the mistrust between the community and the business and the development community and government was so bad that even if you took a penny, seriously, you took $1, how was the dollar going to influence me? But it's not the dollar amount.
It's the perception.
It's the perception. So I said, you know what? I'm trying to start from a fresh slate. I'm about change. I'm about reform. I'm about showing that, we can rebuild this trust. I said, it's not worth it for me to take that $1. So that's why I pledged it off.
So is that your underlying philosophy of government in terms of what you want to do? Is that?
Yes, my underlying philosophy of government, well, first off is it's about public service. It's about service. I get elected by the people to serve the people. So my boss, my constituency, what I exist for is the people who elected me. So I'm a voice for them. And it's about public service, right? It's about customer service, public service. I would hope one day, in the future, when I'm done with my career, people would refer to me as a public servant, not a politician. And the way you get there is building that. The first thing is trust. Without trust, I mean, I can't come with a project, whether you like it or not. I mean, if you don't like it, it's even worse. If you don't like what I'm trying to do, there's no trust. You would say, no, you're lying to us. So that's why trust is so important. But we're trying to build that trust so we could get to a point of public service, but it's all for equity. So my issues, I mean, my definition of the role of government is to provide that equity, to provide that opportunity, to provide that fairness, that level playing field. Because, you know, we're all not going to agree all the time. But then if you know that the process is fair, everyone gets a say, and, you know, we are going to have to make a decision, have a vote, but you need to make sure that it's all in the up and up, and that there's equity and there's an opportunity for everyone to achieve.
What's the most important thing you've learned since taking office?
Well, you know, that there's not enough time in the day.
Every day's a learning experience, I'm sure.
Yeah, and you know, and I have a thing. I generate lots of ideas, and there's so many things to do. And I do have a staff of 20, which tends to be a little bit smaller than some of the other offices. And even though I have a staff of 20, the district is so large and there's so many issues going on that even my staff doesn't have the capacity. So every time I get an idea or I see something, I write it down. Why? I type it into my phone. And I leave it there for about a week. And I go back and I look at it and I edit the list and I delete it. And then if it survives like 2-3 weeks, then I give it to staff. And then we discuss it, right? Because
it's under agenda at that point.
Yeah. I mean, we just recently did a re-inventory of all of the things and ideas that brewed in my office in the first 2 years, and it's like 50. I mean, and I sat down with my staff and we did an exercise to reprioritize, because, look, every single one of those is important. I mean, in government, this is the hardest part. If you have $100 and if you have a $1,000 problem with $100 to solve, and let's say if you want to solve what's more important, foster kids or seniors, and you could only fund one, or you could fund both of them half at half the rate, and which is gonna. So those are the questions. So when I have these issues of 50, all 50 issues are important, and all of those issues are important to a certain constituency, a certain group. And it's hard to pick and choose because I want to do it all, but I can't.
Yeah, how do you balance it all?
Yeah, and that's something I'm still trying to learn. And my staff wants me to do it quick because they're being inundated
every day with new requests.
And new ideas, because, and sometimes just because you have an idea, it sounds like a great idea, might not be. Right. So it's about being time efficient and prioritizing.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, you know, we're here on behalf of Silver Lake, so we have to talk about Silver Lake. Even though you didn't grow up there, I'm sure you spent.
No, actually, I spent a lot of time in Silver Lake.
Okay.
Because, you know, and I shouldn't admit it, but when I was younger, I was one of those skateboarder kids. It's starting to come back again, but at least now they have skate parks. Back then there were none. So I had friends at Silver Lake, Atwater, Los Feliz. We used to. I don't know what I was thinking. We skateboarded all the way to Santa Monica. Not the bus. We skateboarded. I don't know how we did it. I'm like, that's pretty crazy. I don't know. So, but I know the areas. Yesterday I was in Silver Lake for National Night Out. Obviously, we're in 2017, and it was at the Citibank. I used to skateboard in right next door at the Bank of America parking lot.
Is that right?
Yeah, because in the back there was a big parking lot which was pretty empty, and we used to skateboard there. Yeah.
What were other places you hung out in Silver Lake when you were a kid, or even now?
Well, when I was a kid, you know, any single open space, you know, in front of any 7-Eleven because we used to buy soda, you know. But when I was much younger, definitely went to Griffith Park and the zoo. I remember going to the zoo. I was thinking about it, and I was like, I remember it was free back then. But then again, how would I know? I think everything was free back then, right? My parents paid for it. But yeah, so I hung out. Silver Lake was, I mean, to those who knew it, it was always booming. But these days, it's really booming. So I mean, lots of amazing places. I almost bought my first house in Silver Lake. I was this close. I even put in an offer, but I lost. So, but thank God I didn't, because the first house I bought, I always lived in that area. In college, I lived multiple different apartments. I lived in Miracle Mile, lived near the Grove. I lived at Los Feliz. I mean, I lived all over the place. But if I had bought that place in Silver Lake, it would have been in CD13, so I would not have been able to run. so thank God.
Then you would have been my neighbor.
Yeah. It was on Occidental, the house I was looking at. But yeah, I mean, La Mille.
Sure.
Great coffee shop. I think La Mille was like one of the first ones to go in there too, right?
Kind of revived that.
Yeah.
And now it's just.
Yeah, now it's like be careful what you ask for, right? I recently went to Hyperion Public for my birthday. Amazing! I love it. I love the outdoor areas. I mean, there's so many gems. Lots of restaurants.
That used to be a gay piano bar.
Really?
For years and years and years, for like decades.
You know what? I remember the
other
piano.
side, yeah.
Didn't they have like a piano on the,
In my head.
or like a piano type,
Logo.
yeah, on not the billboard,
Yeah,
but
the other side,
Yeah.
on the signage,
yeah, that's right. I kind of remember that
Quite
now.
a change now. So,
Yeah.
there's a lot of changes, especially at Sunset Junction with all that development going in there. And that's, I think, a lot concerning to a lot of people. The Frost Chaddock development. That's the 4100, all that stuff. So anyway, lots of changes. We'd like to see you in Silver Lake as much as you can get over there.
Oh, trust me. Anytime I go to Silver Lake, we get calls and says, "Well, what is he here? Why is he here? What's he looking for?" And I'm like, "I just came for for a birthday party. I came for a drink. I thought you wanted me to be here."
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. We'll add you to our archives. Thank you.
Appreciate it.